Hi folks, it's me, Michaela, and welcome back to my channel. I am in typical fashion here before I head off to work today to start a new reading vlog. And I decided it's about time I tackle reading some of the oldest books on my TBR. So I went into my Goodreads and I went to my want to reads list and I changed that sorting feature so that it was reverse date added to see what was the oldest book on my TBR, and it's The Vanishing Half by Bennett, which I apparently added to my TBR in February of 2021. That is basically when I started having a Goodreads, and I never read the book. But what I do have is a Libby loan for this book, so I was like, now's the time. Let's clear off some of these old books on my TBR. So I'm going to be reading a couple for this vlog. The first one obviously is going to be The Vanishing Half by Bennett. That is like the actual oldest book on the list that I have. And then after that, I might just pick some like pretty far back, and I might not read them like in order because I think the next one on the list is like a nonfiction book that I put there when I was like in music school. So I don't even think I'm interested in reading that anymore. But that's a discussion we'll have once I finish reading the first book on the list, which, like I said, is going to be The Vanishing Half. So I have my Libby loan. I'm going to be starting reading this at work, and as per usual for my reading vlogs, I'm going to read about a third of it and then I'll let you know some of my thoughts. So here we go. 2025, finally reading books I said I wanted to read in 2021. What's 4 years? But yeah, we're accomplishing some pretty old goals this week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this vlog for, because I'm also doing some rereads in the evenings of like other books that are like not for this vlog. Anyway, you don't care about that. I'm going to go read some of this book. I'm going to go to work, and yeah, I'll let you know more when I know more, because I haven't read the book yet. Okay. So I've made it to a little over a third of the way through The Vanishing Half. I'm almost at part 3, and I think there's 5 parts in the book. Don't quote me on that because I don't quite remember. But I have read part 1 and most of part 2 now. And so far, I'm having mixed feelings towards it because I do find it interesting, and this is obviously a very different perspective than my own lived experiences, because The Vanishing Half, if you don't know, it's a story following a set of twins who are black but can be white passing, and basically like one chooses to live as a white person and one doesn't, and I knew that much going into the book, so I was like really excited to kind of read this perspective, because like I thought we were going to be following both sisters, and I'm going to get like a lot more thought-provoking and information on colorism and that kind of climate and discussions, because I'm a very white woman in Canada. So there's a lot that I don't know and could never know about being a black person in America, obviously. So I was really excited to like read a book that was like focusing on that. I did not realize that it was going to be a historical fiction, so that was a little jarring at first, but not like a negative thing. It was just unexpected. The book starts in like 1968, I believe, and kind of like goes through a couple decades. I also was expecting it to kind of show both sisters' perspectives, but like so far it's just been from one, the sister who stayed versus the sister who left, in a way. Again, like unexpected, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm so disappointed this other perspective isn't here, because I like didn't actually know that much about the book going in. And I am finding it interesting to read. I am enjoying it. However, I do find it confusing. There have been so many times where I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's real and a thought. Sometimes the writing will just go on this like tangent, and then we're supposed to just come back like a page later to the middle of the conversation we were just in and like remember what the person said in the conversation before that. Like it literally will be like a conversation is happening, dialogue, thought reminds her of something, and it'll like talk about like the past or the present or the future, something else for like a whole page, and then it's like the next line of dialogue, and I'm like, I don't know what happened right right there. There was a whole thing where it was describing the character POV, and it was like, she thought about this and this and this and this, and I was like, I don't know if this is like she thought about that as in she was like imagining, or if that actually happened and she was thinking about her memories. Like, I didn't know. And so there's a lot of times where I've been like, wait, what? And had to go back and read again, because I just don't think the writing style is clear enough to follow the thoughts that are happening, because it's just like going for me. And so there's quite a lot of things where I've had to like reread, and I really find it difficult when books require me to reread sections, because it just cuts it up. Like, I just want to be able to read straight through, you know? And if I am going back to reread something, I want it to be because like, oh, I wanted to read that again closer. Like, I want it to be a choice I'm making and not something that I feel is necessary because I literally have no idea what's happening in the book I'm reading, you know? Like, that's how I feel. So it is kind of going in a way that I was not expecting, and I'm not super mad about that, but then I also am like confused all the time. So it's like very difficult to pinpoint exactly like how I'm feeling about it. I think like if I stopped right now a little less than 40% of the way through the book, and if you told me like, oh, you have to put the book down, what are you going to rate it? I would probably say like a 3, because I do find it interesting. I do like the characters, and I do really like reading this unknown perspective to me. But like I said, I have no clue what's going on sometimes. I'm just really confused, and I would really like to not be confused while I'm reading this book. So I'm gonna go read more of this book and hopefully not be as confused, and then I'll let you know some more of my thoughts. But like right now, I wasn't necessarily going into this thinking I was going to absolutely love this book and it was going to be 5 stars, but I was expecting it to be better than it is for me at the present moment. I think that makes sense. I think that's clear. There you go. I'll get back to you on if I figure out what's happening. Okay. I have read more of The Vanishing Half, and I am still confused. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still confused. I am now approximately 2/3 of the way through the book, so 1/3 left to go, baby. Woo woo. And yeah, I do find this plot writing style very difficult to follow, and I think it's really hindering my enjoyment of the book. I think that like the characters are really great and their stories are really interesting to read. However, because each part of the book, and there's actually 6 parts, not 5, so I was wrong in the last clip. Oops. But like each part, it starts, it'll say like part 1, whatever it's called, 1968. And then the next one is like part 2, whatever it's called, 1978. And then it goes back to like 1968. And then it's like 1982 or something. And it's like, and then also add on to that the fact that like each part is from the perspective of a different person and you're bouncing between them. And I just feel like each part is too long to like tie them together well for me. I think if like each part was just more a short story about that person and then we like moved on, I think that would be better. But because they're like kind of this interconnectedness, like the stories come together and they meet in a way where they're like, I guess they're like parallel sometimes to each other, it makes it like difficult to like read 50 to 70 pages and then try to come back to what you were doing 50 to 70 pages ago. I find that like a little tricky to do. And then also, like I said, like on a smaller scale, the like writing just kind of like goes on these tangents, like which I know like I'm one to talk because I go on a lot of tangents. I'm on a tangent right now. But when you're reading and it's hard to decipher between whether something is a memory or some kind of imagination, or if it's part of what's happening like presently in the plot, and then all of that is happening inside the middle of dialogue conversations, it's like just very hard for me to logistically follow this without consciously trying to. Because if I'm just reading, like I don't know what's going on. There are parts where I got so far into the book and then I was like, wait, that thing I read 10 pages ago was real? I thought that was just somebody's like believing little imagination thought, but apparently that actually happened. Like I didn't know that. So that is like making it quite disappointing to me, because I think if the writing was clearer, I would be enjoying the book a lot more. That being said, I still think think it's a good book. I think maybe it's just this writing style is not something that my brain can easily compute. Maybe like other people are like, what are you talking about? Are you like a little dummy? Because this book makes total 100% sense to me. But like for me, it's just been like really, really tricky to keep track of and follow. So I'm obviously going to finish the book, and I'm still like liking it. I just definitely am not loving it because I'm confused. Like I don't know what's going on. I don't know what else to tell you. Like I am confuddled. I'm going to finish the book and then I'll get back to you with my final thoughts, though I don't really see them perhaps going too far away from where I am currently, considering I've kind of felt the same way through the entirety of the book so far, but you never know, okay? And then also when I see you next and I'm done the book, we'll get to pick the next book from the oldest on my TBR. We'll look through and decide which one we want to do. By we, I mean me, because I'm the one reading the books. Okay, I will see you when I am done reading The Vanishing Half. I finished reading The Vanishing Half last night, and I did end up giving it a 3-star. I'm not gonna like talk too much about it because I feel like my feelings have been the same throughout the whole book. I really liked the characters, I really liked the perspectives, and I really liked the relationships and like the dynamics that were being built in the story. However, I just felt like the plot made it too confusing and difficult for me to like properly follow and appreciate like what was happening. So it really affected my reading experience of the book, and so it just was like, it was good, it was fine. I got to a certain part near the end of the book where there was this like line about how the line between remembering and imagining is really close, and then it made me go like, was all of this confusing? Is it something that actually happened, or was it someone's imagination like on purpose? Because if so, I don't know if it necessarily was executed well, considering that wasn't clear that that was being done on purpose to like make some kind of statement about that. So it was just like, I got near the end of the book and read that line and I was like, this is like oddly exactly how I feel about the writing in this book. And then I was like, did Brit Bennett do it on purpose? I don't know. And I think if you did do it on purpose, then like it should be obvious that you did it on purpose. Otherwise, I guess maybe that's just like a weird coincidence that my feelings were like stated in the book as like a character's feelings about something. I did really enjoy like what the book had to say regarding like your identity and reinventing yourself, and how there's a certain level of like you can choose who you are in the world and who you want to be, but that always requires sacrifices, and like you're kind of always going to have regrets either way. Seeing how like these twins who chose to live their lives very differently, and how they each had benefits and each had sacrifices and regrets with that, and how those choices then affected their relationships going forward, not just with each other but like with everyone around them. And I thought like all of that was like very interesting, and so it was like a good book that way, but I just like couldn't give it a great rating because by the end of it I kind of was just like telling myself like, you're so close to the end, just finish the book. I didn't necessarily want to pick it up because I knew that I was just going to be like kind of confused, and I was going to have to like reread paragraphs, and it doesn't matter how much I enjoy characters and relationships and plot points, if I cannot follow the plot points, like I am going to have a difficult time. So I give it a 3-star. I am glad I read it, you know, like it's the oldest book on my TBR, so it feels good to have that like moved over to the red shelf now. I did also go through my Goodreads. I'll show you like a little screen recording here, wherever it fits. I'll put a screen recording. Again, went to like my want to reads list and like reversed it so that like the oldest added was at the top. I think like the first one is this like nonfiction that I'm not interested in reading. Then I had Arsène Lupin, which is like a classic French detective novel or something, which I'm just like also not interested in reading. Then there was like Crescent City, which I just started reading Throne of Glass. Like I've only read the first book of Throne of Glass. So there's like 7, 8 more books in that series that I need to read. That's by Sarah J. Maas. So I'm not about to start reading Crescent City. Okay, that's not going to happen. So then I settled on Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid. And it also just so happened that it was available on Libby. So I have Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid here on my iPad. And I think I actually know nothing about this book. I remember just seeing the cover around a lot with people saying they liked it and giving it good reviews, so I think that's why I added it onto my TBR. But I don't think I actually know much about it. I believe it's just like a general fiction novel, and based off of the title of Such a Fun Age, I feel like it likely has something to do with like a coming of age story. Perhaps. Don't ask me, I don't know, and I'm not about to read a synopsis because you know how much I love to go into books blind. So I'm going to start reading Such a Fun Age, and then I can let you know what the book actually is about and give you my initial thoughts once I've made my way through the first bit. Okay. See you there. Hello, I'm now a little over a third of the way through Such a Fun Age, and I am quite liking it so far. Also, side note, I can finally film in the evenings after work again because it's not dark as soon as I get home. Yay. Like I said, I'm a little over a third of the way through Such a Fun Age, and it's like not quite what I was expecting. Based off of the title, Such a Fun Age, I feel it was kind of giving like coming of age story vibes, but it's not quite that. Instead, like we're following two women. One is Alex, who is I guess she's like an influencer of sorts. She like writes letters and gets free stuff and like has this whole like let her movement. She does like talks and speeches. It's very like feminism, girl power, kind of girl boss, a little vibes. And then the other woman is her babysitter, Amira. We're in Philadelphia, and Amira is like 25, out of college, and is like trying to figure out what she is going to do for life. So I guess in a way that part of it kind of is a little coming of agey, but not quite in the way like I was expecting it to be, because it really is more about like the relationships that's building between the two women, and then how their lives kind of are interconnected now, like at a little over 30% of the way through. Like I'm in part 2 somewhere kind of space. You're learning a bit of their past, and like as the reader you can see some connections between like Amira's present and Alex's past that are like starting to happen, but like the characters themselves aren't aware of it yet. And so like that's interesting, and it's a lot about like female friendship, which I like. The whole like kind of catalyst that starts the book was like a very gripping series of chapters where Amira is called by Alex like late in the evening on like a weekend to take her 2-year-old to like the grocery store because they had like their window broken and she doesn't want her 2-year-old there when the police are there. And so while Amira is at this grocery store late at night with the 2-year-old, Amira, who is a black woman, is babysitting a 2-year-old of a white woman, and the people at the grocery store accuse her basically of like kidnapping this child, and that's like the whole thing that starts kind of the story off, which is like a very interesting thing to begin with. So I do like it. I like the writing style. I find it like very easy to read and fun to read tone. It's a type of storytelling that I'm finding very intriguing and that I like and I want to read more of. There are like a few aspects that I'm not quite sure about. Mainly the discussions around weight have kind of been like raise an eyebrow a little bit, because there's like a point where Alex is saying that like she's gained weight and she doesn't even know how much, and her friends are like, this is a loving intervention, and then they tell her like to stop eating pasta and how, you know, she needs to get herself back together. And although like part of it is that like Alex feels like she, after moving away from New York, is kind of like losing her passion and like the control and the part of her life that she really felt like good about. So in a way she's like, oh, I need to get myself back together. But have it be like around her weight and then be like, oh, she's not skinny anymore. And there's another point where like Alex thinks about how she wants to ask Amira how she stays so skinny. And it's just like it's giving me an ick. And I can't quite tell if it's intentionally giving me the ick or not. Like it's hard to tell what side of this conversation the author is on. Also, like I'm pretty sure this was written in 2020, so it's not like this is a book that was written in 2006 or something and they're talking about how everybody should be really skinny and crash dieting, you know? I'm on the fence because I don't want to say it feels like it's like positively reinforcing this idea of like crash dieting and staying skinny all the time, but I also don't feel like it's saying that this is an improper thing. It's not also giving like negative connotations towards that. So I'm not sure how I feel about that quite yet, but that's like my main issue that I've had so far, is that I really feel like how they're talking about weight and bodies is kind of not okay and not what I agree with personally. Because also, even if you do choose to lose weight, because that's fine, just like doing the whole crash dieting of like drink coffee, cut out all your desserts, and like don't eat you know, like that kind of rhetoric is just like so unhealthy, both mentally and physically, that like I just can't get behind any kind of literature that seems to be promoting that as like okay and positive. But yeah, I'm also like not super far into the book, and that's also doesn't appear to be like a huge topic, but it has come up twice, so weird that it would happen twice. But you know, I'll see where it goes. Maybe like what it's going to discuss around that topic is going to kind of like grow into something else that I'll be happy with, and you know, that's why I have to keep reading the rest of the book. So those are kind of my thoughts so far. I'd say maybe like at like a 3.5 if I had to rate it right now. And yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm gonna read more of the book, and then I'll let you know some more thoughts that I have on said book when I have said thoughts. Okay. Hello. This is hot. I need to put this down. So I'm now about 2/3 of the way through Such a Fun Age, and I really have been enjoying it more now. I only have part 4 left to read. I've now read part 1, part 2, and part 3, and I'm really intrigued to see how the story is going to conclude and where it's going to go. And it is kind of becoming that coming of age, discovering yourself kind of story I was expecting it to, but just really not in the way that you think of when you hear like coming of age story, because usually it's like a late teen person going into the world and becoming an adult. And this is more, you know, like Amira's 25 and Alex even is older, she's in her 30s, and they're both kind of struggling with this idea of like, what am I doing and like, who am I kind of questions, and seeing the people around them in their lives seeming to like know exactly what they're doing and achieving things that they're not. And that is like a very interesting thing to read. It's like a more relatable perspective as someone who's like in their late 20s still trying to really figure things out completely. So I've been really enjoying that. I'm also really liking the discourse and the topics that are like quite thought-provoking of perspectives, especially in terms of race and also like white people having white saviorism complexes. And it's just like a really interesting to see how like Amira is stuck in the middle of these two people who kind of think negatively about each other for the actions they're doing towards her, and they're both trying to like save her from the other in a way. And it's just like a very interesting thing to read, knowing the perspectives of both of those individuals and Amira in it. And so it's just something that's like making me do a lot of like thinking, and I'm like really enjoying that part of it. I do have this issue where I feel like the book is being very mom shamey, and I think it's mainly because this shame towards someone's parenting style is from Amira, and it really feels like, from at least my interpretation of the book, is that kind of like Amira is the person that we're following, we're rooting for, and she's the one who's like positive and right, is kind of like the tone I'm feeling. And like I could be totally wrong and just interpreting that incorrectly, but that's like the way I feel when I read it. And it feels like she's being very judgmental of Alex as a mother towards Briar, and then also towards other mothers that she sees, and she's not a mother, and she's also like a babysitter, so she's not there all the time. And like to see people judging people's parenting styles off of like the small snippets that they see of someone interacting with their child is just something that like I have issue with. And do I think Alex is the best mom to Briar? No, not at all. But also we know through her perspective that she finds it difficult to connect with Briar. She's a 3-year-old, and she is talking nonstop, and she's feeling very lost in her life on top of this while trying to continue to be a mother. And she also has a 7-month-old that she's caring for. And so although I do think that there's definitely times where she's dismissive to Briar, because Briar just, you know, is like a lot of energy, is like nonstop, full force, go, 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 question, question, question. I don't think it's like fair that Amira just like assumes that like Alex is only ever a mom when she wants to be one, and that she like is basically never acknowledging Briar. Because I think when you're not, you know, like living 24/7 with a 3-year-old like that, I really just don't think you can like speak on it. So that's just like something that like it just gives me the ick a bit anytime I read it. So yeah, that's like kind of my thoughts, but I also think that plays well against too the fact that Amira is like judging people for how they're treating their children, but then both like Alex and other characters in the book are judging other people by how they're treating Amira. And I think that's almost like in a way like a nice kind of like reflection of each other. I don't know if reflection's the right word, but it's like it's interesting to see both. So it makes me feel like maybe it's intentional and like I'm not supposed to be siding with Amira on her like mom shaming, but I don't know, it just like it makes my little heart a little mad. So those are my like very long-winded thoughts. I'm gonna finish the book and let you know my final thoughts, but like so far I'm definitely really liking it. I think it's gonna be somewhere between like a 4 and a 4.5. I don't think I can give it a 5-star just because there have been some things that I think just like aren't quite right. I also am now realizing that this book is set in like 2015, 2016, which makes sense for all the girl bossery that's happening. When I fully realized that it was revolutionary, because I thought it was like set more like 5-ish years ago than like 10-ish years ago, you know? Like there's kind of a big difference there. But yeah, okay, I'm gonna finish the book. I'll let you know my final thoughts when I have them. Toodaloo. I have finished reading Such a Fun Age Now by Kiley Reid. I like finished it like a couple days ago at this point, but I wanted to kind of like sit with my final thoughts on it. And I also didn't want to look cute for the camera yesterday. So here I am now. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. I really did find it quite interesting, and I also found the plot quite gripping and intriguing and entertaining. So it really like kept you reading quite well. I read it pretty fast, I feel, or at least like it felt like time was going very quickly while I was reading it. I will say like the final part really made me change some opinions and thoughts on Alex. And I think that, you know, like a lot of her actions aren't as defensible anymore, knowing what you know at the end of the book. That being said, I feel like it still is a really like thought-provoking read, and I also in a way really enjoyed Alex's character, because Alex is someone who is so constantly obsessed and thinking about how she's being perceived and wanting people to tell her that she's like doing the right thing and saying the right thing. She is wanting to keep all of her social media so people think that she's still living in New York because that's how she wants to be perceived. She's constantly thinking, is this the right thing to say? Is that the right thing to do? And I think she's always wanting people to give her this outside validation and tell her, yes, you did the right thing, because she doesn't actually want to reflect on her own actions and biases and like come to the realization that she probably actually knows that what she did isn't the right thing to do, because just because it might be like the righteous thing to do doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. So just because she's doing something that she thinks is helping someone, she didn't go and ask if that person wanted or needed that help, and instead just decided to do it because she feels like it's the correct and the right thing to do for how she wants people to see her. And I think that's like a really like interesting topic to bring up and discuss, because I think a lot of people who, you know, like want to do like the correct and the right thing, they want to be supportive and helpful, they want to advocate for any group, whether that's for like racial reasons or any other kind of minority group that you want to be like an ally to. You have to not only do what you believe is right, but do what that community and individuals are asking of you. And I think also there's an aspect too that just because it might be what some people in a community want, it doesn't mean that that's what like an individual wants, and that like everything is very nuanced. And I just thought like it was like a very thought-provoking book for me that way. I still do have like an issue with Amira as a character because she goes through the entire book constantly believing that she's the only one who understands Briar and that like she's the best thing for Briar and she's the best person who cares for Briar. And I just like cannot get behind somebody thinking as a part-time babysitter that they're like the best person to happen to a child's life when she is completely unaware of that like situation for the most part, because she doesn't have a relationship with Alex in a way where she understands Alex's parenting, because she never wanted that kind of relationship and she doesn't need to have it with Alex. But like to then show up 3 days a week to care for this child and then believe that now that you're leaving, like she's going to be missing out on like the only person to ever understand her, it's just something that like I really disliked. But I also like the fact that Amira wasn't a perfect character because of that. It made people feel more real. So I ended up giving it a 4-star because like I said, there's certain things in this book that I just like couldn't get behind, that I felt like the book was portraying in a positive light and not a negative one, such as weight and weight loss and crash dieting, as well as this perceived notion of like judging mothers, I guess, which just really, you know, like rubbed me the wrong way. So I ended up giving it 4 stars, but overall I think it was a really good book and I'm really glad I read it because I found it to be, like I said, just something that really made me think about myself and my own actions and my own justifications for why I do things. And it's really great to like have books that allow you to open those discussions with yourself and others. So I'm so glad I finally got around to reading this book, like 4 years after I put it onto my TBR. But that, I guess, is like it for the video. You know, I have now read 2 of the oldest books on my TBR. What an accomplishment for me. Great job. If you happen to like the video, make sure to give it a like, give it a little thumbs up. If you happen to like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. What is the oldest book on your TBR? How long has it been on your TBR? Let me know down below. Is it more than 4 years? Because that's how old mine was. But that's really basically the beginning of when I started actually tracking my reading. So that's pretty bad. But would love to know what some of the oldest books on your TBR are, and are you still interested in reading them? And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.